Flying just takes them by surprise.
That sudden drop in temperature has half an hour ago. Mexican officials closed the border. So many U.S. refugees.
We prepare to go live to Los Angeles.
What you see is happening now.
Look over there behind me! That's a tornado! Yes, a twister in
This is just massive.
This whole swath of silver small fish. Here's the banks here, but here's all of that fish, and some of them are still kind of in the process of dying. It's very compelling. It's showing up all over social media, both in China and around the world.
It's an astounding photograph that's part of a disturbing trend. Since May, 30 large whales have been found dead in the western Gulf of Alaska. That's 3 times the normal yearly average.
Colorado rocked by an earthquake late last night. This is a 4.2 magnitude quake hit right near Trinidad. It's in Los Animas County. It happened just after 11 last night. No reports of any injuries, and right now it's still not clear if there's any damage to any buildings. We'll keep watching over that for you.
I'll probably point to it on the phone. Something here.
Well, that's
There's like a car that's like fucking submerged.
All right, so you've probably seen a lot of this video over the last several days. It's just crazy wind and rain from Typhoon Sodalor as it was making direct landfall in Taiwan. This was a little bit less than 2 weeks ago, and very often we talk about these coastal cities. That's where the biggest cities are in Taiwan, you know, Taipei, places like that. But the vast majority of the land area of Taiwan is terrain like this, where you've got a lot of mountains, you've got a lot of hills. And the problem is when you get a typhoon that hits, that dumps over 40 inches of rain in some spots, like Sodalor did, you end up with scenes like this. You get the landslides, you get the mudslides. People are still cleaning up from this. Let me show you exactly what the terrain is like where our correspondent was there. It's a town called Wulai. It's up in the mountains. And as we zoom in, you can see the terrain is just, extremely mountainous, extremely hilly. And it's not just there. I mean, it's across really a good chunk of Taiwan. I'm just giving you a small little sampling here. That's what most of Taiwan is like. So, you know, when he's looking over this cliff there, that used to be a road. People are still cleaning up from this. And the problem is we've got another typhoon coming down the pipe this weekend. Definitely not going to help the cleanup efforts at all.
UN's World Meteorological Organization has dropped 2 names from its list of future Pacific storms for radically different, deadly reasons. For the first time, a name has been booted for its association with a terrorist group. The name is ISIS. ISIS was a prominent goddess of ancient Egypt, but nowadays the name commonly refers to the militant Islamic State, which the UN has accused of committing atrocities in Iraq and Syria. ISIS will be replaced by Yvette. The other name dropped for good at Mexico's request is Odile. Last year, Odile was one of the most powerful hurricanes ever to hit Mexico, killing 11 people and causing more than $1 billion in damage. Odile is being replaced by Odalis. The next Pacific hurricane season starts May 15th and runs through November 30th. I'm Alex Wilson, the Weather Channel.
The Texas City Fire Department has their hands full right now. They're responding to a fire that started early Thursday at the Texas City Valero refinery after lightning struck a transformer. So there are a bunch of firefighters out there on the scene. There's an oil container that's burning inside of the refinery. They're planning on letting that fire burn itself out. Here is a look at where the refinery sits on Google Earth. Right now we're being told no danger to residents in the area and no injuries have been reported. This whole swath of silver small fish. Here's the banks here, but here's all of that fish, and some of them are still kind of in the process of dying. It's very compelling. It's showing up all over social media, both in China and around the world. Those silver fish lining the shores of a river, this river 6 kilometers from the site of those 2 massive explosions at the chemical warehouse in Tianjin. Now, fishermen are helping collect them so that they can be disposed of, but the Global Times quotes experts who say the fish died because of an annual change in the salt level in the water, not pollution from the Tianjin blast. And our CCTV reporter was there with investigators on Thursday. An inspector, showed her the result of those repeated tests.
We took samples of waters where dead fish were spotted. We brought the samples to our emergency monitoring vehicle and tested them with the professional instruments. The results of the 3 tests all show the density of cyanide is 0 milligram.
We should note, though, that we do not know what other tests were conducted on the water for chemicals. Now, also Thursday, hundreds of cleaners descending on the explosion site itself. You see the trucks here. They began removing the debris on Thursday. Officials say that they can spread pollution, so they will be decontaminated as they go in and out of this site, which is quarantined. And Elaine, air and soil testing, they are still going on nearby roads. Also part of the picture so far, those tests have been ruled, quote, basically safe. But investigators want to make sure, of course, that they can continue to assess the situation as that cleanup continues.
All wastewater has been contained in the blast site, and we will not discharge the water until it meets required standards. Our next step is to monitor the long-term impact of the blast on the oceanic environment, and the impact of atmospheric deposition and water discharge on the ecological environment. The Tianjin Municipal Government and Tianjin Oceanic Administration will conduct long-term research on these subjects. We will brief the media once we have conclusive results.
The images show the core area of the blast before and after the deadly explosions. The images will be provided to authorities to help with disaster evaluation and relief efforts. So far, remote sensing satellites have covered an area of over 100 square kilometers at the blast site. Several other meteorological satellites are also monitoring the weather system.
We can see obviously that before the blast, everything was in order, such as the parking lots, buildings, and the roads. After the blast, a huge hole was discovered, and this area used to be a parking lot as well, but has been severely damaged by the blast. Here used to be the white rooftop of this building, but after the blast, you can hardly tell.
Greenland's ice sheet is the second largest ice mass on Earth. The amount of water it holds would be enough to raise global sea levels by around 7 meters, according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Between 2002 and 2011, the ice sheet shed around 215 gigatons of its mass each year.
Until not too long ago, maybe 10-20 years ago, people considered the ice sheets, Antarctica and Greenland, to be very stationary objects. They would not change due to human impact. They would only change very, very slowly as a reaction on the climate. But lately we find out that these ice masses, they do react, and they react fast. They even react on heavy rainfall, we find out nowadays. That's a study that's in Nature now. Apparently, if there's a lot of rainfall falling on top of the ice sheet, it finds its way through, and it lubricates the bottom, and so a single weather event can have quite an impact on the dynamics.
In one of the studies published in Nature, scientists described how lakes under the ice sheet are draining far faster than previously thought. The water released then lubricates the bottom of the sheet, accelerating its movement. The result is increased calving, where blocks of ice break off from the glacier's edges. The other study points to a similar mechanism from rainfall.
When you get rainfall occurring over the ice sheet, especially close to the end of the melt season, the water finds it hard to get out of the ice sheet, so it'll go down to the bed of the glaciers and the ice sheet, and it will try and find a way out any way it can. But by the end of the melt season, there isn't very efficient drainage. It's like the pipes that drain the ice sheet are starting to close down. They're starting to get blocked. So this means that the whole ice sheet starts to move, it starts to accelerate because this water is lifting it up and it's kind of lubricating the bed a little. And so this has quite an important impact on the ice sheet as a whole. The whole thing starts to stretch, it starts to move a bit faster, you get maybe an increase in calving.
Meanwhile, the next United Nations Climate Change Conference will come to Paris in early December with the aim of keeping global warming below 2 degrees Celsius. Abdiel Leroy, CCTV.
Stuff this morning. This is awesome here. This is the Taal volcano in the Philippines. Look at the clouds, look at the motion.
Wow. That's pretty sweet.
You see some rolls going on through. Talk about being in the clouds.
Down, yeah.
That's not ash. That's an actual
cloud.
cloud.
That is actual cloud. You are in the clouds right
It's a little misleading because it says volcano.
Right. And I was thinking coney clouds.
You know what? I'm wondering if this is what it's like to be really close to like the backside of a lenticular cloud, or it's the cloud's coming over something and then it's dissipating and evaporating right before your eyes.
But you know, a lot of times we show shelf clouds from the ground. Now you're actually on top of the shelf. All right, so you're looking at, and there may be a little
eye to eye with the shelf.
Yeah, you're eye to eye with the shelf. Nice.
I saw lightning flash. Did you see an amusement park and they had rides going and everything? Look at it. Look at the swing going to the left of your screen. Look at that.
Wow, that is cool.
A car set on fire, houses burning out of control, and businesses burglarized. All of this after 2 white police officers shot and killed an 18-year-old armed African-American male Wednesday in St. Louis. Residents took to the street shortly after hearing about the shooting. Police tried to clear the scene, but when protesters refused to move, the police moved in. Shield guys, protect your stick! A line of officers with riot shields began marching. According to police, protesters started throwing bricks and bottles at them. Police responded by filling the air with tear gas. Some residents believe the police overreacted using too much force.
Police are driving down the street shooting tear gas where kids are.
Over the loudspeaker, it was repeatedly given. This is the first warning. This is the second warning. This is the third and fourth warning.
This all began when police were carrying out a search warrant in a high-crime area. 2 suspects fled the home. Police gave chase. According to officials, one suspect, Mansour Balbay, turned and pointed a gun at officers. 2 officers opened fire, killing Balbay. The grass left stained with his blood.
There were 2 officers in the alley. Both officers fired. The suspect was struck. He dropped his gun and continued to run through a gangway until he collapsed.
Police say 4 guns were recovered from the shooting scene, 3 of them stolen. Tonight, police brace for more violence, worried about relations between the police and the public since the shooting death of Michael Brown just over a year ago, just miles away in Ferguson.
We're following some breaking news this morning. Colorado rocked by an earthquake late last night. This is a 4.2 magnitude quake hit right near Trinidad. It's in Los Animas County. It happened just after 11 last night. No reports of any injuries, and right now it's still not clear if there's any damage to any buildings. We'll keep watching over that for you.
In a late-night meeting of the North Korean ruling party's Central Military Commission, Kim Jong-un ordered frontline areas into a so-called quasi-war state and commanders to be ready to launch surprise attacks against the south.
The General Staff of the Korean People's Army sent an ultimatum to the South Korean Puppet Defense Ministry, saying the Korean People's Army would launch a strong military action unless South Korea stops broadcasting towards the north within 48 hours.
These loudspeaker arrays at the border are the source of that so-called warfare. South Korea restarted broadcasts of propaganda nearly 2 weeks ago, for the first time in 11 years. It was in response to what happened earlier this month on the southern side of the demilitarized zone. South Korea says northern forces planted landmines that maimed 2 of its soldiers.
최근 Landmine explosions and shelling by North Korea are illegal and they are grave provocations. We urge North Korea to completely stop its reckless and hasty acts.
Jungnyeong village lies just a few kilometers south of the border. It's the closest civilian area to where South Korea says the first North Korean projectile was fired on Thursday. At one point, hundreds of people were told to leave their homes near the border. Only here is the advisory still in place.
North Korea's provocation is likely to continue, so we are advising residents to stay in shelters. There are some who went out mostly to carry out their daily business, but we will advise them to come back to the shelter this evening.
Inside, it's mainly the elderly and the young who've stayed behind.
Living in this area, I've seen many drills and heard explosions, but this time the sound was louder and there was an announcement asking us to evacuate. Compared to the past, I'm more concerned.
Seeking refuge in this shelter is starting to feel like a bit of an uncomfortable habit here. Just last year, a North Korean anti-aircraft shell fell right here. North Korea had been firing at propaganda-carrying balloons launched by South Korean activists. This time, residents have the added preoccupation of a deadline ticking down towards 5:30 p.m. local time on Saturday. South Korea says if a military strike follows, it will counterattack strongly.
And we're looking at a hurricane heading your way. And is this good news, bad news situation? We know you need the water so bad. How are people taking it?
We want a lot of rain and a little wind. That's pretty much what we're looking for from Danny. I mean, the rain is desperately needed all over the island.
Now, what are people doing about this? I mean, are people getting ready to try to capture the rain? I mean, how do you deal with something like this when you're in such bad drought?
Well, there's been a big investment movement in water tanks in a lot of residential and businesses. But people have, I mean, even ourselves, we have all kinds of containers collecting water. Whenever there's a rain, you're putting buckets out there so you can water the plants, to flush the toilet. So we're becoming pretty good at improvising and collecting water on a personal basis.
We also know when events come to extremes, it can oftentimes highlight other problems. Has that been the case where you are?
Yes. I mean, if we get Danny, one of the big concerns would be with as dry as the soil is, there's a lot of mudslides. Right now, people are almost herding water. You only get water so often, and it just kind of slows down the pace of life because it's not as convenient as usually.
So, I mean, you only get water a couple times a week. How do you deal with that? What do you do? What's your routine?
Well, we have some big container tubs in the showers, so when we get water, you fill them. You do all your laundry those days because you never know if they're going to put another announcement that they're going to give even less water. So you try to get all your chores that involve water in the house done. I mean, the restrictions are very strict, so you can't water plants, you can't wash cars. So if there's a rain, people are outside with soap washing their cars under the rain.
Israel has launched a second attack against Syria in less than 24 hours, killing 5 people. There were no more details about the airstrike. Earlier, Israeli forces bombed areas in Syria's Golan Heights, killing 1 soldier and wounding 7 others. Tel Aviv says its attacks are in reprisal for rocket fire from inside the Syrian territory.
A local woman rattled after a dead crow in her front yard tested positive for the West Nile virus. So far, no San Diegans have been infected this year, but experts say it's imminent. Yes, so far this year, the number of birds in the county that have tested positive is more than double the amount from last year. 10 News reporter Candace Crone is live in Santee, where a woman just found out she was feet away from an infected crow. Candace.
Yes, Steve, a homeowner found the dead bird in this Santee neighborhood just off Bonita Drive. County officials say they've seen an unusually high number of dead birds with West Nile virus and say human cases will likely follow.
It was laying right here by the tree.
Christina Kaler was caught off guard when she found a dead crow lying in her front yard.
The wingspan was about that long. Its body was about that large.
She found the bird last Thursday and immediately called the county's Vector Control Service. They called her back a week later with news the crow tested positive for West Nile virus.
So I was caught off guard and I was really surprised. Because, I mean, when you hear it on the news, it's a whole different situation when it's in your front yard.
We contacted the county and learned so far this year, 88 dead birds tested positive for the virus. That's more than double the number last year. A spokesperson for the Department of Environmental Health said they're not sure what led to the increase.
In a normal year, we'd only have maybe at most 15, 20, 25 birds that might test positive. We've already got 88, and we're only starting the peak season for it right now.
Just like humans, birds get the virus when bitten by infected mosquitoes. So far, no human cases have been reported in San Diego County, but environmental health officials are worried that could soon change.
We're pretty concerned. When you see as many positive findings in birds and mosquitoes as we found so far, we know that it's really just a matter of time before we start getting reports in humans.
Last October, a La Mesa man died from West Nile virus. County officials urge people to get rid of any standing water near their homes because that's where mosquitoes breed.
And wildfires are overwhelming in some cases. 3 states, California, Oregon, and Washington. They're being fought by nearly 30,000 firefighters, along with experts as far as Australia and New Zealand, and a record number of meteorologists as well. More than 40 are giving firefighters weather forecasts from the field. You can see it from space as well, from the International Space Station. One of the largest fires has spread to 16,000 acres. That's the Twisp fire in Washington. Miguel Almaguer is live there now. Miguel, we understand this may be merging with another group of fires.
Hey, Chris. Yeah, good morning. They have multiple fires out here in Washington State, what are all started as these small spot fires, now converging into what they call complex fires. So there are several issues going on out in this area. As a matter of fact, they issued some more warnings overnight, some more evacuations in this area. They're even asking for volunteers for the first time in state history here. They're asking anyone with firefighting experience and heavy machinery experience to please step forward. That's how thin resources are here. Officials say across the country, some 40 million homes have the potential to be at risk for wildfire. That's about 40% of our country here. So fire officials very concerned about not just the fires they face here, but about the potential for other fires down the line. In states like nearby California, the most dangerous fire season is still ahead, months like September and October. So here in Washington, resources spread very thin as they fight several fires, several major fires in this area alone, while in other states they are still bracing excuse me, for a very long fire season still ahead, Chris.
In whale near Kodiak, Alaska. It's an astounding photograph that's part of a disturbing trend. Since May, 30 large whales have been found dead in the western Gulf of Alaska. That's 3 times the normal yearly average.
They've been floating and/or they've been stranded for a temporary period of time in inaccessible areas, and a lot of those have been moderately to severely decomposed.
Dead whales are also a concern in BC waters.
You know, we've had quite a few whale deaths just recently, but I think overall we're still within a normal range.
Most recently, a dead humpback whale washed ashore north of Bella Bella. It was approximately 12 meters long and weighed an estimated 40 tons. More importantly, it was one of 5 whale carcasses discovered in only 6 days off BC's coast.
We were able to necropsy 2 of those animals, which are fairly fresh, both humpbacks. So we're hoping that if there is anything going on, that some of the information that we get back from the tissues and the samples we took will tell us if there's anything unusual going on.
What's killing the whales is a mystery. Off Alaska, the tally includes 11 endangered fin whales, 14 humpbacks, 1 gray whale, and 4 unidentified cetaceans. The leading theory is toxins from an algae bloom, but there's no conclusive evidence. It's almost impossible to get samples from carcasses that can't be retrieved.
For the harmful algal blooms, we want, say, for example, the liquid in the eye, feces, and maybe bile and urine. For infectious disease, we would probably take different tissues.
The growing number of deaths has triggered an extensive investigation. Members of the public can help by immediately reporting any sightings of dead whales or whales in distress. Belle Perry, CBC News, Vancouver.
Three people have been reported wounded in a shooting on board a high-speed train in France. Details are still emerging. The train was en route, though, from Amsterdam to Paris. It was rerouted, though, to the city of Arras. Two of the victims were seriously hurt, but officials say their wounds are not life-threatening. The gunman is now in police custody. France's railway company says he carried an automatic weapon and a bladed weapon. We're working for more details on exactly what happened. Let's get the latest from Jim Bitterman. He joins us now live from just outside the French capital. How much do you know?
Not a whole lot more than that, except that the French Interior Minister, Bernard Cazeneuve, is on his way to the scene. The train has been stopped at a town called Arras, which is about halfway between Brussels and Paris, and the passengers have all been taken off, and those involved that were in the car when the shooting took place have been taken into the train station and are being talked to by psychiatrists, but probably also by police investigators who want to find out exactly what happened. Apparently, the gunman opened fire on board the train. There was one person critically injured, another person not so seriously injured, and a third person that may not have been struck by a bullet, may have just been injured. But in any case, three people were injured in this attack. The spokesman for the Interior Minister says here that, in fact, there is no reason to connect this with terrorism yet. He said it's premature to talk about that, but that the Interior Minister may have more to say about that once he gets on the scene. So basically, they're investigating. It's quite a serious incident, of course, because it happened on this high-speed train, which thousands of travelers take each day between Amsterdam and Paris. It's a kind of thing that a lot of people have been on in their normal duties, and so I think that it's the kind of thing that's very jarring, unnerving to see this kind of thing happening on board a train. It's just emphasizing the point that you have to be ready on guard for just about anything anywhere these days.